turn the garage lights on.
Coming right up.
Hey guys, this is Dan with Gears and Gadgets. Thanks for tuning in. Today we are going to be doing, I guess, the first real episode of this build series with my 2021 Ford F-150 PowerBoost. The product I'll be putting on today, that is, again, this is all stuff that I've purchased myself. This is the Rigid D series. These are the square floodlights that are going to be mounted with these mounts over here up on the pillar. Then I'm going to show you guys how I've wired all this stuff up and all of the electronics I've chosen to go with at this point in time. And I'll show you guys how I've run all of the switches. It's been a huge process. I did not go with the Raptor upfit mount switches because it's just as expensive and ultimately kind of a limiting ability with the switches. So these are the Z-Roads brackets. These are something I bought off their website, just kind of searching around online for the most basic bracket that I could find that wasn't going to be a just large monstrosity. Trying to keep this looking clean. Perfect. Now, one thing I'm gonna do that is not called for in the instructions is I'm gonna put a piece of tape on here to prevent the metal from contacting the aluminum, just in case there's any vibration there. I wanna make sure I keep that separated so that I'm not having this eating away at the side of the aluminum. And then you also run into some issues, maybe with some dissimilar metals, things like that. So I'm going to just put some tape on here to provide just a little bit of separation. We'll trim that up on the bench real quick. Man, that's super easy. This is also a great way to break a windshield. These things could not be any easier to put together. Not going to be a big feature on my video. If you can't figure this out, you have no business doing it. I say that a lot. Yep, I'll just chop this. So now what I'm looking for here is the green and purple wires on this Switch Pros panel. And by doing this, I'll actually be able to use switches 5 and 7 and be able to control these separately. The reason for that is using one as a work light possibly, basically trying to light up a specific area without all of the lumens. Maybe you just want some of the lumens. And being able to basically dice this wire harness apart that came with the rigid lights is a great thing. Having the switch pros being the power supply, not having to wire directly to the battery. Now, I would not advise soldering over top of the battery, probably, but I am a professional idiot and give it a shot. If this explodes on camera, I'll have a viral video on my hands, I suppose. Now what I'm going to do here is just take these grounds, both of these, and run to, there is a body ground over here. All right, so there we go. It's all wired up. Let me show you guys what this Switch Pros panel looks like, how I wired it up. This is the panel here. Now they do tell you in the owner's manual to not mount it horizontally like this. You're supposed to mount it vertically so that if any water gets in here, it doesn't sit directly on top of the panel. Well, this engine bay, there was literally no other option that I had except for right there. So that is what I did. The wire connectors here can pull out, and then you can just take that panel off and pull it off to the side. There's enough lead here with the power wire to get that up out of the way. So you're not preventing access to get inside of that panel, which is good. Now, I also ran the harnesses as OEM as I could up through. I put a grommet here and ran it up through here, up underneath, and then ran over to the driver's side. Now the reason why I did that over to the driver's side, if you look down, you have a little penetration there in the firewall that was very easy to poke through right there. And then I just ran that harness back across on the inside, back to the passenger footwell. So now that we've got that installation buttoned up, I do want to take you in the truck and show you the switches with the Switch Pros 9100 that I've got wired up. I'm really excited about it. The thing is awesome. It's a crazy, crazy switch panel. So let's get this all buttoned up, test these lights, and then I'll take you in and show you how the switches work. Let's close her up. Tool check. Always good to do a tool check. Now this should be my passenger side. Yep, there's passenger side and driver's side. And then of course, both. That's pretty wild. And the color temperature matches the OEM lights. That is fantastic. Driver's side, passenger side. So now that I've shown you how that works right to left, I'll take you in the truck, show you the Switch Pros panel and how you can actually get this thing set up to customize pretty much every switch on the truck. So now that we're in the truck here, I do want to show you guys this Switch Pros 9100. I put it up here. I thought this was the best spot to put that and have it look as OEM as possible. This is honestly, I think, the greatest solution, and you can actually even change these lights to match all of the interior lights. Works great, love everything about it. And then I ran the wire harness, which I did have to make an extension for, up around through here and down in through the driver's side footwell. This is how I did it in my old truck. I saved this specifically for this video. This was the switch panel that I had. This is the part that goes on the roof mounted console. Now the problem I had with these switches, I loved how I had this set up. They were actually hard to toggle a little bit, especially if you had gloves or something. It was very difficult to get these to actually latch, but I loved the way it looked. And these wires just ran down into the engine compartment where I cobbled together my own relays. So basically the switches were just low voltage to the switches, and then all of the heavier duty power came from the relays, which were hooked directly to the battery, each of which had its own fused connection. I made that myself. It worked out great, but it was somewhat limited in its abilities. I also had these light bars over here tucked back behind the grill that were great. I loved them. They served their purpose, but I'm going for, I think, a little bit more of a refined look with this truck, and that's kind of why I went with these D-Series with the rigid and the Switch Pros panel. But you can certainly wire something up like this yourself. It's not rocket science, but it does require looking at some wire schematics and all that and kind of figuring it out. I am not somebody who enjoys wiring. Matter of fact, I hate wiring. So I'm going to show you guys how you can control this Switch Pros SP9100 through the app, which the app is not great. That's part of why I love these videos not being sponsored, is I can tell you if, you know, what I love and what I hate about things, and I'll tell you the Switch Pros app is very basic, but it doesn't really have to be all that great, in my opinion. The Switch Pros does come with stickers, so you can actually label these appropriately, and there's a bunch of options. Left side, left. There are my stickers. Now to show you guys the app, when you connect to the app on Bluetooth, you can see a little blue light is set here. First of all, you can activate the switches right from the app with the vehicle off as well. I will go into settings, and when you go into settings, the switches turn off. This is where I want to show you the configurability of this panel. So let's go through configure switches. What I have for, this is a problem I've noticed. Switch 2 keeps going back to momentary. I want that just on off. I'm not sure why that's going on. I also want all the rest of these switches to be just on off. You can do momentary as well, but for what I want, I just want on off switches. Now they also have the ability to have these be either ignition required or on battery. I am going to allow, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I'm gonna have 5 and 7 actually be on the battery. So this way I can control these lights without the truck actually running, and that's what I would want for these ditch lights. Flashing off for all of these. Now for strobe, I'm gonna play with this. I wanna see if I can do 5 and 7, super strobe, burst strobe. So I can actually make these ditch lights now also hazard lights if I want to. We'll see how that works. This will tell you that all outputs will cut off if the battery drops below 11 volts. Memory, if you turn the truck off, if the switch was on, when you turn the truck off, it will remember that it was on and turn it back on. So for my radar detector and dash camera, I have it set up so that when they're on, when you turn the truck back on, the switch turns back on. So those are essentially always on. Exit it out of there, and we should be able to go back into operating these switches. I gotta see this. That's pretty wild. So now if I just turn the left side, turn it on, turn the right side on, just one single button press, that works. Or I can double tap it and it'll start to strobe. So I can basically set these to strobe should I want to do that, which is pretty wild. You could essentially use those as like emergency lights. I do have my strobe lights that I've used for construction purposes, that the truck, it kind of uses the OEM lights to strobe as you normally would. It basically replaces the need for the rooftop amber lights, which I've used quite a bit in my previous years. But for the most part, it would just be on, and those I can tell you are definitely bright. I will go into switch overcurrent values, and this panel will shut down if you go over the amps, and I know that because I fried a radio recently. So these lights, I believe, are only 4 amps a piece. So I'll set these 5 and 7 for 5 amps. We'll exit. We will test them, and they should, if they spiked over 5 amps, the panel will kick them out, but that should be what these lights require, so it should be fine. But if it were to kick out due to an amp draw or some sort of short, the panel will know that, and you'll see it start to flash, and it'll cut those off. So that's just a way to make sure you're not sending too many amps to any device that essentially cannot handle them. Let's also set the switch names, left ditch, right ditch, and that's what we'll call those switches. This is what I mean by the app is not fantastic. It kind of goes through these random crash cycles and kind of resaves weird settings sometimes. Enable output dimming, did not save, so we'll enable. If I can dim these ditch lights, that would be even cooler. Whoa, that's super cool. I was not anticipating that to work. It works. I'm super pumped about that. So that is it. It looks like we're done programming. And now let me talk you guys through the rest of the electronics I have on here, and settings should be saved. So now, if I cycle the ignition, turn the ignition off, turn it back on, you should see the radar and camera turn on automatically. So I have my radar detector I've got my dash cam, which I did a separate video on. I love that. Radio is going to be for a handheld radio that I have, which I bought that radio for. Was still am Part 107 certified FAA for drone operations. And here in Phoenix, I was doing quite a bit of drone operations very, very nearby airports. I'm talking within an eighth or quarter mile of an airport. And with that, I like to have the radio so I can monitor air traffic and be able to tell when helicopters are coming in, because they come in and they come in low and fast. So I have that radio, and I wanted to be able to mount it in here. So having the ability to have this just plug in here and kind of sit up on the dashboard without needing it to be in cup holders and all that, and having it piped to a separate speaker behind my head just kind of makes the whole thing better for that type of mobile drone operation. So having all of this switched is very nice, because if you're in any of these situations where maybe you're working out of your truck and maybe you get a phone call, if you have your radio on, you're doing drone stuff or whatever, and then you do have to take a phone call, but all of a sudden I have these electronics on. The radar detector could start making noise, the radio is still going, your camera at time can have some audible alerts. So when you're on the phone, to be able to just turn off all these inputs and then be on a phone call is awesome, because I've been on those phone calls where people are like, what is that racket? So nice to be able to turn this stuff off. That's kind of the whole reason why I started this switch thing, is the radar detector can really be annoying and distracting, especially if you're on a work call or something like that. Just all the beeps and stuff like that can be really annoying. So I think this switch panel is awesome. I love everything about it. That is absolutely wild. I was not anticipating this strobe feature to work for some reason with those ditch lights. So that's going to wrap my electronics upgrades that I've done on this 2021 Ford F-150 PowerBoost. This is just the beginning of my off-road build series. I do have some suspension upgrades that are coming, but due to just the general parts shortages and delays, that's taking a little while to get here. I've got half of it kind of installed right now. I've got some underbody stuff. I've got some performance videos, just a lot of things you guys will see coming out here. With that being said, guys, thank you very much for tuning in. I need to now clean up my mess, which is always a fun part of the project, but I am very lucky to have everything that I do have here, and all of it is because of you guys and your support with the channel. Prior to, a couple years ago, I didn't have any of this stuff, so all the money that comes out of this channel is kind of going into my future endeavors and the attempt of building the channel and growing as you guys support. I really appreciate it. So thank you very much for tuning in. If this is your first time tuning in, please hit that subscribe button down below. Remember, likes go a long way to support the channel. I'll see you guys next time.